What's up guys and welcome back. Today on Trent's Garage we are going to be picking up kind of where we left off. Basically I had a night where I could come out here and work on the truck a little bit, and Brandon wasn't around and Allie wasn't around, so nobody was really here to help me film, and I just kind of like put my head down and grinded, and I got some of the cross member built. Then I ran out of welding wire. So I got new welding wire today, and we're actually gonna start finishing up our cross member that's gonna hold the transmission and the transfer case. The thing I'm really excited about is that once I get the transmission and transfer case like mounted and supported in the frame with this cross member, I can take all the supports out from under the truck, we can lower it down, start taking out the interior so that I can actually cut and start tubbing out the inside of the cab so I can rotate the transfer case up so that it sits flat underneath my belly pan. That's gonna be really awesome because then I don't have to worry about it getting hung up on rocks or obstacles or ledges or anything like that. So that's gonna be a huge, huge plus. I know that I'm kind of bouncing around and doing all kinds of things and moving in all different directions, but I think once we get this transfer case rotated up inside the body after I cut it out, then we might be able to start getting our front axle over there and maybe start doing some linkage. I don't know. I'm very nervous about the linkage, so we'll see what happens. But today we're gonna start out by finishing welding up our cross member for the transmission. All right, so these are the two pieces that I've been working on. These are going to basically make up our cross member for our transmission. So what I have is I have a plate that's actually attached to the bottom of the transmission mount. This is gonna weld onto the frame here. It's gonna weld onto that plate, and then this will weld onto the other side of the plate. This will weld onto the other side of the frame. And then this has this jog up here so that my drive line can actually go underneath it. Took me a while to do all of this, and I don't even know if it's gonna like work perfectly, but I have faith. So I got everything welded except for the three sides of this piece here. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean that up, get those three sides welded, and then we're gonna go over here, get it all tacked together, and then we'll be able to weld it into the frame, and our transmission will be fully mounted. Now that I've got these both welded, I basically need to get these underneath the truck, and I need to get them kind of like setting on the plate that they're gonna weld to, but also like touching each frame rail on each side. I need to get it tacked so that I know right where it's gonna sit, and then probably just fully weld it in. It's gonna be kind of a tight fit, but I think if I actually take out the transmission mount, which I'm making it so that everything can unbolt, I'll be able to pull the transmission out without dropping my transmission cross member. If I do have to make a removable transmission cross member in the future, I can very easily just cut each side of these brackets, put a couple plates in there, bolt them together, and then weld them to each side to make it removable. But for now, we're just gonna make it nice and strong and weld it in there together. And like I said, if I have to pull the transmission out, I can still do that. All right, now that I've gotten my plate here cleaned off, I've got nice bare metal on both sides so that I can weld my two brackets, one on each side. I can get them clamped onto the frame so that I know exactly where they're gonna sit, get this fully welded on, and then we can actually weld it to the frame, and we know that that's actually gonna hold the transmission. It's not gonna move. And yeah, I guess the only thing left to do is go bolt it on and weld it together. All right, I've got my plate over here clamped onto my frame rail, and then I've got the plate that's going to be attached to the transmission mount compressed with this pipe, so that there's a nice tight connection right there. I'm going to go ahead and tack all these points, and then we'll move on to the other side, and if everything looks good, we'll fully weld it in. Alright, I'm gonna let those tacks cool for a second before I take all the clamps off. As long as nothing breaks when I take it off, we'll move on to the next side. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and let pressure off of that little plate on the transfer case.
Nice snag.
And my tacks are holding. Let's see if these ones hold. Sweet. The way that these frame rails are sitting right now, because there's no cross braces or anything holding them together, they have these body mounts hanging off the outside. So since all of the cab and the engine and all that stuff is weighted on the lift, the cab is pushing down on the outsides of those body mounts, and it's wanting to bend those frame rails inwards. So if I use this and I lift up the body, it allows the frame rail to straighten back out. And then I can get these plates welded on where they're straight. And then once I've got them fully welded, I can let the weight back off of the body, and hopefully the frame rails will stay relatively straight. That looks pretty good. It's a weird looking cross member, I'll give you that, but that's because it has to jog up on that side so that the drive shaft can come under it, and it has to be really low on this side so that the exhaust can go over it. So, doing the best I can with what I got, and now that those are all tacked in place, this frame rail's looking good, that frame rail's in a good spot. I think it's basically time to fully weld it in. All right, so I made a total amateur rookie mistake. Basically, these plates that I have welded on the outside here, I ground the face of them so that I could get good welds on the front, but I never actually ground the edges and got all the mill scale off of the edges. So some of these were like the factory edge of the actual 1/4 inch plate. So it had some mill scale on it. And now that I've got them tacked in place, I can't grind them all the way to get all the mill scale off. So some of my welds are getting pitted because of that, which is very unfortunate and very upsetting. And it kind of looks like crap, which upsets me. But there's nothing I can really do about it now, especially because most of these are fully welded in. So I've got about 3 welds left to do that I can actually get to, and this thing will be fully supported. I think it moved an inch. Well, she's welded in there. For the first time, the motor, transmission, and transfer case are all being supported by the frame that we are still currently building. Very exciting. Now, I think we can actually lower this thing down and start gutting the interior. Alright, so that's probably all the welding we're going to be doing today, but I did get the cross member completely built, completely welded. The transmission, transfer case, engine is all being supported by our frame. Now I'm just going to move some of this stuff out of the way that is underneath the lift, Get the lift lowered down, we'll be able to remove the driver and the passenger seat, get the carpet out of there, and then we'll be able to start figuring out exactly where we have to cut the floor so that we can rotate that transfer case and get it under our belly pan, or above our belly pan. Oh, it's disgusting in here. I'm very excited to actually start gutting this interior. I do have PRP like suspension seats for the front seat for the driver and the passenger that are gonna go in here. So I always intended on taking out the driver and passenger seat. The only thing that's gonna change now is I'm probably gonna rip out this nasty carpet that's 20 years old. It is really gross inside here. So I'm actually really happy to just take the carpet out and get rid of it. We'll probably end up like dynamatting and rhino lining the floor, or maybe throwing in some new carpet or like a rubber floor, something that's easy to hose out. We've got a lot of work to do. I gotta get the center console out, I gotta get the seats out, the carpet, and I can't even open the doors all the way, so this is gonna be a little bit of a challenge. To get an aftermarket shifter that isn't that one. But I don't know how difficult that'll be to hook up to this transmission. If this one is just easy to leave right there, then I'll just have to build stuff around it. But I do have to find some places to mount our shifters for the Atlas. I have a 2-speed shifter, and then I have the 3rd stick that goes for the 4-speed. So I'm in over my head. Let's just say that. All right, now I'm hoping I don't have to like completely remove all of the carpet and do a bunch of crazy stuff. Hoping I can just pop a couple things off, just fold all the carpet back. Now that I've got this pretty well exposed in here, what I really need to do is underneath I made a couple of marks where I need to basically have the width of my tub section, and I'm guessing it's going to be like about here to there, but I don't really know. And so I probably need to raise the truck back up, get underneath, figure out where those spots are, and then drill a couple holes with a small drill bit so that I know kind of where my outline of the tub section needs to be. And then I can take an angle grinder or a hacksaw or something and cut that section out up here. Then we can pull the transfer case out, clock it, put it back in, and then it'll be up inside this area of the cab. And then we can build a sheet metal kind of like a dome or a cage over the top of it, and then our seat will just sit on top of that. We have to be careful because if I make that section, that tub section, too tall, my seat might not fit in here without hitting the ceiling. So there's going to be some tight clearances that we're working with here, and yeah, I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited, and I guess the next thing we're going to do is lift the truck back up and start drilling some holes and figure out exactly where this tub section needs to go.
You know, I wish this was going to be a little easier, but unfortunately,
I don't think it will be. So I've got to cut it forward far enough that these cables aren't going to run into where I have my tub section. And so that means I've probably got to cut it about in line with this cross member. And then I've got to cut it all the way back here to the end of this box. So don't know how much I'm actually gonna have to tub. Probably not that much. Like the whole transfer case doesn't need to go all the way up in, it just needs to go up about 4 inches maybe. So it's not gonna be crazy out of control. It's just gonna be a little bit more of a project right here than I wanted, but this is what happens when you want to do custom things. Got a couple of drills holed up there. No, I got a couple of holes drilled, and that's kind of like a connect the dots and like a rough estimate of where I think I'm gonna have to cut it out. Now we'll lower the truck back down, I'll get up there, try and make a nice shape, and then we'll get our angle grinder out and start cutting. We lifted up the truck, we got our little holes drilled that's kind of made it like a connect the dots you know, activity that we've got going on in here. The dots go right here, so basically from here to the front dots are right there. So from here to here on this line, I'm gonna cut, and then I'm gonna cut down my dotted lines and across. I've gotta go through this seat support bracket and then across here, and then we're just gonna raise that whole area up about 4 inches to give us that space to clock the transfer case so that it's above the belly pan, and then we'll have to re-sheet metal this back in here. I'm not good at working with sheet metal at all, and so this will probably look like crap. But it's gonna be under the truck, and it's probably gonna be back underneath this carpet if I can get the carpet to work out. If I can't get the carpet to work out, people might look at it and they might say, that looks like crap. So I'm not all the way through on the top section because I think it's thicker, and I don't really want to go through because there's vital components in there and I don't want to be cutting anything. So I need to make one last cut, and then I probably need to take a Sawzall or something and try and finish off some of this stuff that's a little bit deeper than the angle grinder can cut. And then we'll be able to pry this section out of there and kind of wiggle it back and forth until it breaks out. I am sweating to death trying to get this piece out. There's one little teeny corner in here in the back that just needs to be cut a little bit deeper, but the cutoff wheel on my angle grinder is worn down pretty far, so I don't have very much depth here, which is good. I don't want to be cutting too deep and start grinding into the transfer case or, you know, nicking lines or doing anything like that. It's pretty much broken all the way around except for this little section right here at the bottom, and the transfer case is just on the other side of that, so it's a little nerve-wracking, and I'm just gonna keep working at it, but I am sweating like a pig in here trying to get this thing out. Finally! We got it out. So now, as you guys can see, the transfer case is hanging down right here, but as we clock that and we rotate it, it's gonna swing up into this little cavity here now, and then we'll be able to build a tight little, you know, sheet metal shell around it. But I'm tired. It's very hot. This was a little bit strugglesome, but I'm excited we got it done. Now I think the next step is raise this thing back up, pull the transfer case off, clock the adapter plate, and then try and reinstall it. have to do now is gonna be a little bit aggravating, and that's that we have to tighten all of these bolts down now that it's clocked in this different position, hoist it all the way up there, get it in place, get the bolts tightened, and make sure that it's gonna fit under the belly pan. And then if everything goes according to plan, then we have to pull it back out, take these bolts out, Loctite them, put them back in, and reinstall the transfer case again.
The whole thing's gotta go backwards, yeah?
Yeah, let's get it right there.
Gotta go to you.
We've decided that this is the final resting place for the adapter plate. This is the angle that the transfer case is going to live at. I think it's going to be tight enough underneath the frame rails that it's going to be inside the belly pan, and hopefully it's not too tight that it's going to make our driveline angle run into our transmission cross member that we just made. That could happen too. So I am just going for gold now. I'm throwing the red Loctite on these bolts, tightening them down. I think 30 foot-pounds is the torque that these things are supposed to have. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these in, torque them down, and then we're gonna throw that transmission and transfer case back together. Hopefully it all fits. The bolts are Loctited, and we are ready to lift this transfer case back up, try and get it installed. All right, well, we made a ton of progress, and we have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that the transfer case is clocked, it's Loctited, it's attached to the transmission, it's up above our frame rails, which means we can belly pan it without any issues. The bad news is, since I clocked it, now my drive shaft for my front axle is going to run directly into my transmission mount, the one that I just made. And so I'm gonna have to rework the driver's side of the transmission mount, which means basically half of today was a waste, and now I'm gonna have to redo it. But we did make a lot of progress. We got the cab all cut out. We got the transfer case kind of, you know, clocked, rotated, pushed up inside the body. I'm really excited about that. But today has been quite a long day, so I think we're gonna call it. But if you guys enjoyed coming along on today's adventure, make sure you show me by giving a big thumbs up on today's video. Consider subscribing to this channel if you haven't already, and I will see you guys on the next one.